Hi, everybody. My name is Aris and
I'm Dennis Hengeveld.
and we're with the Paper Money team here at Stacks Bowers Galleries. We're just having a tableside chat today about some of the highlights in our A&A sale. So with that, we'll get started. Dennis, it looks like you've got a nice pile here of stuff. Why don't you run me through what maybe your favorite note is in the sale?
Well, I think Air is one of the favorite ones. It's not pretty. I'm not going to be, uh, you know, lie to you and say that this is the most gorgeous note you've ever seen. But from a historic aspect, this is probably my favorite note in the sale. Late 1820s, Argentine occupation of what's now the Falkland Islands.
The what islands?
The Falkland Islands,
Can you say that one more time slower?
Isla Malvinas.
Oh,
Yes, it's also known as that. So, um, obviously, this is something that even to this day, the effects of it, kind of ring true with the Argentine government still laying claim to the
mm.
Falklands. But this is the period that they actually occupied it, late 1820s. There was a gentleman by the name of Louis Vernet who set up a small colony, and he printed a series of banknotes for circulation. This is one of them, and we've never offered this before.
May I take a look?
Absolutely.
Wow, it seems in nice overall condition, apart from, the small little corner missing there.
Yeah, and
Um,
that just barely touches the design. It's a shame, but there's probably a speck of ink that got torn off as a result.
so I know we've never handled these. Have you ever personally seen one of these before in your career?
There's been one, and it's actually this note that sold at auction probably about a decade ago.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Um, there's an issued note in an Argentine museum. So they are illustrated, they are known. The note's not unique, but it's pretty rare.
It's a pretty cool piece.
Yeah. So what about you? I see you have got a stack.
I do
I
have a stack.
spy something on top that looks very intriguing.
It is, in fact, an intriguing piece. In my career, I've never seen one of these before. Uh, Based off of the research that I've done, I don't believe there's been one that's sold publicly. And at present, it's the only graded issued example. This is a 1942 $100 note from British Guiana. Um, People who collect the Commonwealth or just rare notes in general know that this is a treasure. Um, it's an iconic series that everybody seems to have, the one or the two or the five. Um, in this case, I mean, if I'm talking about pieces that I've handled that I'd put in the, you know, top 10, it would certainly be this one. Maybe even the top five, given how heavily collected it is, or how heavily collected the country and Commonwealth is, and to have what's probably one of the most iconic pieces, and again, to my knowledge, be one of the first or the first auction house to handle one. I think it's just a special moment. I think it's going to definitely be the cover note uh, in our ANA sale. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just beautiful. I mean, it's intact. There's just a little bit of ink on the reverse, which, I don't think anybody's going to complain about, but all the pertinent detail is there. The color is nice. Um, it's just a pretty solid piece overall.
Well, it's definitely an amazing note, and I know you make fun of me sometimes for liking stamps, but when I look at this note, I have to mention.
Stamps.
I know I have to mention the most expensive single stamp that's ever sold, British Guiana Magenta. It's a little older, but from the same country, from the same colony, and that's a 1 cent stamp. This is a $100 note, so I think that brought $9 million last time it sold. This is probably almost as rare, especially in issued format. I've never seen another one. I know there's one or two specimens known. I think the last one of those sold like 2009. Like that's how infrequently those come up. And I think that stamp has sold twice in the same period. So, not saying it should be worth $9 million, but
Well, I think if we called the owners of the stamp and we said that they should collect banknotes, then maybe they'll run each other up. But I think 9 million might be a stretch for world banknotes
it's
at the
at the
moment.
moment. Yes,
At
most
the
definitely.
moment, but I definitely think that, yeah, go find another one. That's what I
Exactly.
tell
Yep.
people.
Nope. Exactly. So, well, and just looking at your stack there, I see, from the
Yes,
same series, we
yes,
got something else.
yes. But wait, there's more. Um, 1942 20. I haven't really handled one of these either. I think there's, what was it, 3 graded in
Yeah,
VF25 on the pop.
and I've handled one of the other ones, and in 25, a couple of years ago, before I joined Stacks, and this is by far the nicer one of the two that I've handled.
Yeah, I just, I get technically it's got to be graded to 25, but I think it faces up really nice. Um, hard to argue if they said it was a little bit higher in grade. I wouldn't really complain about it. I mean, there's maybe a little bit of ink at the bottom here preventing what should be maybe an EPQ designation, but it's just a beautiful piece, and you know, but wait,
So well, okay. As you go into that, like, okay, let's say that I'd like a British Guiana note, but I'm really conscious of quality. Do you have anything that could fill that?
the 10, I EF40 in a 10,
That's yeah.
I um yeah, I don't really have words for how difficult it is to find quality pieces in general from British Guiana, particularly this series.
Mhm.
But then a high denom like the 10 in 40, go find another one.
That's I know this is finest known, so finest known. I don't know what the next one is, but the paper quality of this is just absolutely fantastic. And it's I see it has a comment here for staple holes, but the way I always like to look at this, and I've mentioned this in some of our descriptions, is yes, it was staple to something at some point, but because of that, it probably that's the reason it survived in XF.
Yeah.
And it's amazing quality. I don't even know where the staple holes are. Oh, there's a couple up here, but I mean they're so minimal, and other than that, the color is great. The ink is fresh, bright. The paper's bright. I mean it's a fantastic note. So yeah, I guess if you like quality, and maybe the 20 or the 100 are outside your budget, then this 10 and this quality, definitely one you should consider.
Yeah, I mean, it's another note that I argue faces up much nicer than the grade indicates.
Yes.
It, I think, is an EPQ candidate, except for the staple holes and maybe a little bit of handling. But I mean, just the color, yeah, it's like,
Well, with the lights that we've got in the studio here, like this embossing on the signature, this embossing on the serial numbers, and it looks like this note was spent probably a dozen times and put in somebody's wallet, stapled to a receipt or something, and that was the end of its career in commerce.
it's good lore, possibly.
Possibly. I mean, we wouldn't know, but if the note could talk.
You're known in banknote circles sometimes by your dear friends as the Flying Dutchman, and that's for your proud Dutch heritage. And I know that you're a Dutch colonial collector and lover at heart. And I noticed that the next note is probably something you're most versed to discuss. So why don't you give me a little insight on why this is in the pile here?
Uh, sure. I mean, Curacao 1920 to 5. It's the lowest denomination of this series, but it's a very difficult note. And I'll tell you, the Dutch administrators, back in Curacao in the 1920s, they were good at one thing. When there was a new series, they were really good at withdrawing the notes of the previous series. So out of, I don't know, 20,000 issued of this, I think there's about 100 outstanding. And one of the main reference works that was written about 10 or 15 years ago said that he had only seen one of these.
Hmm.
There's a few more graded now, but it's still a very, very tough note. Obviously, I mean, even though it's a 5, it's big. It's, you can see it. It's just, they did not save on paper. I mean, they really did not. So when we sold the Landhuis collection of Curacao last year, that was focused on the slightly more modern issues, 1930 and 1960. But there were some earlier pieces. We didn't have that. That was not sold by us, and I don't think in our archives there is one until this note sells. So It's one of those notes that you look at it, you're like, it's only a 5 billion.
Sure.
Who cares? People should care because it's still tough.
Yeah, it's really neat. I don't recall ever really handling one of these.
So,
What
well,
about that one over there?
this is we're staying in the Caribbean, Leeward Islands. We've had one or two of these before. This is a specimen. This is a plate note in the banknote book, and it may be unique in this format. I'm not sure. I really haven't seen any other ones. But it's from the only issue of the Leeward Islands, which was 3 notes. That was it. That's all they did. And eventually, the islands started issuing their own money, or were part of the East Caribbean states. But this is early on, 1921. So
Yes, this is really
absolutely.
cool. Yeah, it's got Antigua in the bottom left here. Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of the colonial seat, but they circulated on a number of islands, and it's just it's one of the old things. As I've told you this before too. Like, if it was a coin, it would have probably survived. As people lose them, or
Yeah.
people put them in a drawer. But with notes, people just didn't save them, and that's why these things are so rare.
I love the watermark paper on these too. It's just really feels ahead of its time. The lathe work, everything in this note is just, I mean, I guess it's makes sense. TDLR, right?
Yep.
The embossing. Oh my gosh. This is a really nice piece, man. This is cool.
It's like Leeward Islands. Like, you talk to somebody, you have a pub quiz or something, like, hey, where's the Leeward Islands? I bet you a lot of people don't know it. So
Right.
it was fun to research it a little bit too, and kind of see the history. And the British were good at one thing too in the Caribbean, that was change political entities and names and all that. And Leeward Islands is one of them that's gone by the wayside. But
Yeah, everybody who knows me and knows what I collect know I have an affinity for the Mona Lisa note and the Da Vinci note from Italy, the Mona Lisa notes from Costa Rica. I kind of, have a couple of pairs of them together in similar grades. Um, it's a really iconic note, in my opinion, one of the best notes in all of banknotes. I think it's underrated. I think it's undervalued by a lot of people. I know that for years there was never really one that existed above a 58 no Q. Then a couple of 58 Qs surfaced, the 64 no Q. Now I think there's 3. Don't quote me on this. There's a handful of gems. But that said, for a note that was issued for 5 years and in a heavily collected country, for that to be the pop, and for there to be way more collectors than there are existing examples that are nice, I think it justifies the note being an exceptional collectible item. This particular sale, we're fortunate, and it's kind of cool. I don't think we've done this before, but we have 2 consecutive examples, both in ultra high grade 5080 PQ. Again, a really rare opportunity. It's the 1936 date, so it's the last date of issue.
but how long were they issued for?
1931 to 1936.
Okay.
So that was the years that they printed them, and
Now, why did they put the Mona Lisa on the Costa Rican note? Like, what was the reasoning? Like, was he Costa Rican? I don't think Costa Rica was a country at the time.
we don't really know much about Mona Lisa. So Mona Lisa, she might have been where Costa Rica is today and taken a boat to Italy. We don't know for sure. It's shrouded in mystery.
I see.
So I don't want to speculate, and I don't want to misattribute her nationality. But they do say that she's not Costa Rican, but everybody's got their theories. So
Well, why is she on the note? You tell me that.
No, listen, I don't want to get in trouble and talk about her nationality. If the question is, why is she on a Costa Rica banknote, I will let you handle that one.
Well, I was asking you the question.
Yeah, well, I don't.
I don't think we know, but I think it was just a stock image. And there's another note from Costa Rica has Niagara Falls on it.
Yeah.
It's and last time I checked, those were really in Canada, and I don't think they've moved in the the last couple
Well,
million years.
not to tease the Brits, but it was printed by Waterloo and Sons, and you know, sometimes the British they get a few things wrong, and perhaps, the same people who were responsible for some other mistakes in history were responsible for this misstep.
Maybe that's. I know it's your favorite note, and you know.
It is in fact.
s-
I do love this note, and of course I'm joking. Waterloo and Sons. I mean, they're probably one of my favorite printers, and it's actually a good segue to talk about their print quality because the final note that I have is also from Waterloo and Sons, and I think this is just a mastery uh, in art. It's the Imperial Bank 20 specimen form. It's the first one we've handled. Um,
Any particular country for our viewers?
Canadian.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Canadian note, 1902 20 specimen. Um, really, really iconic. I mean, I'm gonna let in the video we'll probably show, or we should be showing now, close-ups of this note because I mean it's just a masterpiece in my opinion. We've handled and sold the 50, and I think the 50 is a little more common in that there's more existing examples known. I've never seen her handled a 20 before. Really excited to see where this particular one ends up. It's really, really a beautiful, beautiful large format example. Um,
It's really interesting because you look at the obviously a beautiful design. I agree with that. And we got the portrait of I believe that's George V. Don't quote me on that. I may be wrong. My British royalty on the top of my head, but then in the corner is a woman with a beehive, and we've seen that on notes from Africa,
yeah,
and then it's also on a Canadian note. So I wonder with the Costa Rica, if we ask why is Mona Lisa on a Costa Rican note, maybe it was just a vignette they had, and the Banco Internacional of Costa Rica decided that, hey, that's a nice looking woman, that's a nice portrait, let's put it on. Um, and then obviously nobody else decided that because it's only on that note. That's unique.
it is baffling that Waterloo and Sons didn't reuse that portrait of Mona Lisa the way that they did reuse a lot of their other portraits,
Right.
especially given you know what they could have done. It's also worth noting. I think that the Mona Lisa. I know that there was a point in time where the popularity of the Mona Lisa was not as big and as great as it is today. And it's quite possible that around this time period, it just wasn't fascinating enough for them to think to themselves, let's put it on more banknotes.
Well, I think I speculated that when we sold one of the yonks a while back in the description, because right around the time that this was issued, there was a surge in popularity
Right.
because the Mona Lisa was stolen.
Yeah.
And they found it in the bedroom of a cleaner, I think is where they found it a couple years later. And there were some movies, and as a result, there was just a surge in popularity, and that's really when people started to take notice to this portrait in Paris on display, and maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Who knows? We don't know. We just don't know. So I've got two more notes here, and it's hard for me to say, hey, we've this one is better than another. So I'm gonna let you pick. What is your favorite of these two?
Just because I think I like the British Honduras note a little bit more. I don't think you could go wrong. Funny enough, I think that the Turks and Caicos design matches or is very similar and close to the British Honduras design, the issue right before this one. So I really don't think there's a wrong answer. I think if you're a serious collector of, the British Commonwealth, you probably equally love both.
And I'm gonna correct you here. The issue before this one was this design, but in different colors. So
Sorry,
you're thinking
two
of
issues
the one.
before.
You're
Yeah,
thinking
my
of that
fault, my
one.
fault. You're right. You're right.
That's
The
true.
first issue of British Honduras
Yes.
is very, very similar to this one.
Well, and so if I'll be honest, I like the Turks and Caicos better. And
Fair.
the reason, even though this is, I think, it's not unique but it's very rare in issued format. It's a VF25. It's a 1924 $10. This is the highest denomination that you can get issued. The 50 and 100 don't exist issued, as far as I know. The Turks and Caicos, though, I mean, it's the first date, the handwritten date. What I think is really interesting, and I don't know if you've noticed this yet, the directors of currency that signed these notes were father and son.
Let me fact check you on this one really
It's
quick. They are, in fact, father and son. That's very interesting.
So I noticed that, and when writing the catalog description, and both of them had a pretty important role in early 20th century Turks and Caicos history. But later on, after this, they started stamping the signatures and the dates, and this is the only one I've been able to find that's hand signed, low serial 251. And when we do show the image of this, pay attention to the color, and you may think, well, I've seen this note before,
Right.
but the color was different. This is the original color, and the other example that has sold a couple times over the past 10 years was heavily discolored. So I think that just makes this a premium example and a very historic note from another kind of outpost in the British Empire.
Sure. And question for you, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but I know with the British Honduras series, one of the things I like about it is that the 1, the serial is, the prefix is A, and the 2, it's B, and the 5, it's C, the 10 here, it's D. I know that earlier issues of British Honduras sometimes follow that same pattern. Is that the case with this series as well?
I don't think so. I think these all started A over 1.
With the fractional prefix.
Yeah, with the fractional prefix. The thing is, these notes are so rare, so
we don't know what the issue.
Well, we do know it. I haven't handled Turks and Caicos before. I don't know if you have, but I don't have the series memorized. It's just a fantastic note, and it's December 3rd, 1903. I mean, imagine what the Turks and Caicos Islands were like in 1903 when this circulated.
I agree for rarity in terms of rarity. This is probably a much more historically important example, particularly given the fact that the color is so well preserved compared to a note that there are examples that exist and are circulating around, but
that's that's also in our business and in our hobby, and this is going to be more popular because more people collect British Honduras. I don't know if you know this. I've always kind of interesting. Back in the 70s and 80s, the dealers that were there, the small group of them, they all collected British Honduras. That was their little thing that they got, and it's for some reason it's always been very popular. Now that's, as you know, the country now known as
Belize.
Very good. I'm impressed.
Belize,
and only English-speaking country in Central America. So I would make the argument, though, and I think to the benefit of our viewers, I think it would be very nice if the catalog had some pictures of Belize as it is today. So I would suggest that we hop on a plane and go down to Belize and get some pictures and maybe make a little vacation out of it. See some beats.
Well, don't use the V word, because I think that this is a company retreat that we would have to.
Yes.
This is a very justified
fact-finding expedition.
It's a very justified fact-finding expedition, and I think that our upper management would certainly agree that they should send us to Belize to explore and make sure that we have accurate imagery to
and we gotta make
sure
there's no other ones there.
Yeah,
but I've got the impression there's not a lot of notes like this left there, if any. I think the ones that.
What a beautiful, beautiful banknote.
So, well, that's all the notes I had. I think it's been a great conversation. I had a good time. Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. I haven't really put that big of a dent in my coffee, but I think I will now, so we can get back to cataloging the sale and prepping for the rest of the A&A. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time to watch. Once again, I'm Aris Maragudakis.
I'm Dennis Hengeveld, and the ANA sale should be up on the website in a couple of weeks and will take place in towards the end of August.